issue 83 and the last issue of the volume. Mel continues to have a discussion about her position and motives with Dick. Knowing they are surrounded, Mel and Audrey are tied up to make it look like Dick was interrogating them, and Blockbuster chases after Nightwing. A fight between them happens, and Nightwing is able to slip from Blockbuster's grasp. Nightwing ends up sleeping for 2 days and decides that he needs to commence a plan to make changes, not just as Nightwing, but a newly fortunate Dick Grayson. He speaks to many people of Bloodhaven, the Titans team, and Lucius Fox. We are also treated to a scene with Superman on what Superman would do. Superman at the end asks Nightwing a favor to check up on John Kent, whilst he, Superman, is off-world. Next morning, Dick starts an official press conference and announces his plans for the Alfred Pennyworth Foundation to support the communities of Bloodhaven. At the same time, we see Heartless watching a telecast of the conference and aims his sights on Dick Grayson. General thoughts on the issues. Jade's thoughts? The one-on-one conversation with Superman is the highlight here, and it reminds me how much I'm looking forward to continuing Superman, Son of Kal-El. Also, I have no idea who the Heartless villain is. Dolphin's thoughts. Dolphin says decent villain fight, but his highlight from the issue was the conversation with Superman. Tom Taylor just gets these characters so well. Also, Dolphin loves the idea of the Bat Family group chat so much. Joshy's thoughts. They did a good job capturing Blockbuster's physicality. He's not as smart nor as powerful as Marvel's Kingpin, but he is the iconic big dog of crime in Bloodhaven, and they're showing him at his most intimidating. The panel where he just walks through the window/wall is terrifying. Also, this will be a repeated thing I've said. Batman being shown caring about his found family are the best Batman stories to tell, and this issue delivers it with a simple, hey, you don't usually call. Also, interestingly, the green and white background of Batman's panel does remind me of the color scheme of a early Detectives Comics issue. The following is an art analysis by theCoastalCity. I wanted to touch on Bruno's style quickly, as he is not only an influential artist to myself, but I believe his work is so important to the storytelling on this series. These are all my opinions, and I am totally happy for people to share their opinions. Bruno's style is the modern take of the traditional comic book style, but amped up to 100. His abilities to create variety in his subjects makes him a standout, yet they still look like who they are, and that just shows that Bruno is a master of his craft. What is obviously a flat surface medium, Bruno's illustrations allows for depth to be created in the pieces with the perfect balance of detail. It is not too much, it's not enough, it's just right, and that in my opinion is not an easy thing to do. It shows that Bruno is able to refine his work to a standard that is palatable to many. Moving on to general thoughts, overall thoughts. Jade. Jade's favourite secondary Nightwing character. Surprisingly, Tim. He wasn't on page as much as some of the others, but in that time, Jade got to compare and contrast him to Dick and actually see him as a person rather than yet another Robin. Jade's favourite issue. Jade usually has a hard time picking a favourite issue, The Perils of Reading the Trade Paperback, but issue 80, if Jade's counted correctly, she believes it's part 3, was the standout for Jade. Dick bantering against Babs and Tim was a lot of fun. Jade's favourite panel was hard. The artwork was gorgeous throughout, so Jade has a tie. Upside down Dick is just too funny, and the chat with Superman was a surprisingly human moment. Jade's overall thoughts. This was such a good pick for me for a comic book club. The art was lovely and easier to understand. The dynamic panels kept it visually interesting. The dialogue, especially the banter, was delightful. To be honest, I was worried that this would be an excuse to look at Dick's spandexed butt. And just that. Instead, I enjoyed this enough that I'm going to hit up the local comic book store for the next volume. Thank you. Joshy's thoughts. That Adam West Batman homage across the eras is indeed a cover for issue 79, a second printing variant by Bruno Redondo, just for everybody's notes. As Jade and Dolphin have taken the Adam West homage cover as their favorite, I'll say my favorite comic cover is the DC Pride variant cover by Travis Moore for issue 81. At a time when Nightwing desperately needed a return to basics after the low point that was the Rick Grayson era, Taylor and Redondo's Leaping into the Light was a breath of fresh air, return to basics that Dick Grayson's Nightwing needed. There's a reason this book, along with DC Pride 2022, are the books I recommend to most first-time comic readers unsure where to start reading comics. It takes all the elements that made Dixon's Nightwing run of the late 90s, early 2000s so popular, while blending in some new elements and blending in a brighter viewpoint, both in the artwork, which is lighter and crisper, but also in the optimistic take on Nightwing as an upbeat hero who is a competent hero, leader, and mentor, but also unafraid to lean on those around him who love him. So this run rewards both newcomers to comics and comic veterans. This volume also highlights two of my favorite things in DC Comics: the brotherly love between Dick and Tim, and showing Batman loving for his found family. I also love how healthy the relationship between Barbara and Dick is. No manufactured drama for drama's sake, no miscommunications that could have been easily resolved. My favorite secondary character, Tim Drake. There was never going to be another answer. Ammo Glitter's thoughts.
I am a huge DC noob, and you will miss nothing about Nightwing going into this book, so I appreciated how accessible this comic was as a jumping off point. It's a very smart move on Tom Taylor's part that you are immediately endeared to Dick by seeing him beat up some particularly nasty bullies as a teen, and then rescue a poor innocent dog as an adult. Taylor also nicely fills in the broad strokes of Dick's backstory, and helpfully situates him in the wider DC universe. What I enjoyed most about this book was the Bruno Redondo and Co.'s artwork. It's one of those books where I'd be hard-pressed to pick a favorite panel or page. The two-page spread with a top-down view of Dick's apartment and a cross-section of his apartment elevator, the bit where Dick jumps off a rooftop to go beat up the guards who get pickpocketed, and we're treated to a whole sequence of drawings that tracks Dick's motions down to the ground. I could go on. It's absolutely stellar work. If I had a tiny nitpick, I don't know if I liked all the plot twists with Melinda Zucco, secretly being Dick's sister and also secretly being a double agent hoping to work against Blockbuster. In my opinion, it would have worked better if it was one or the other, not both. Overall rating, 4 obligatory fan service shirtless scenes out of 5. Favorite secondary character, Barbara Gordon. She's the MVP of the book.
Dolphin Slide. I've read this before and I'm unwell, so I won't be very poetic with this one. Dolphin Pants believes this is the peak of Nightwing, the perfect comic to read as both an intro and a huge fan of Nightwing. Dolphin reads this during his comic reading phase of lockdown. Bring back lockdown so Dolphin has time to read comics again. Favorite cover. So many great covers to pick from, but Dolphin had to give it the variant from issue 79, as it's just full of nostalgia. Favorite panels from issue 78, because it's just a relatable reaction to the best character in the run. Second Nightwing character favorite secondary Nightwing character, Dolphin Pig's Bitewing.